The Galactic Dominion was a sprawling empire of alien species, unified under a brutal hierarchy where humanity, a relatively young race in the cosmos, was relegated to the bottom. Enslaved and oppressed, humans were forced to mine resource-rich planets, pilot dangerous expeditions, and serve as cannon fodder in the Dominion's endless wars. But for all their youth and perceived weakness, humans had something the Dominion underestimated: resilience and an unyielding hunger for freedom. On the barren mining world of Voros 7, Lieutenant Adrian Cole was one such human. Once a skilled engineer, Adrian had been captured during humanity's failed resistance against the Dominion a decade earlier. Now, he worked the mines alongside thousands of others, extracting xanthium crystals, an energy source essential to the Dominion's fleet. Despite the oppressive environment, whispers of rebellion were growing, and Adrian was at the heart of them. The story opens with Adrian covertly meeting with a small group of fellow miners in a hidden chamber deep within the mine. Among them were Kara, a fiery young medic who had lost her entire family to a Dominion raid, and Malik, a former strategist from Earth's defunct defense forces. They had uncovered a significant flaw in the Dominion's operation on Voros 7, the central control hub for the orbital defense cannons, which kept unauthorized ships from leaving or entering, was accessible via a tunnel close to their worksite. "It's a suicide mission," Malik argued, glancing at the crude schematics they'd assembled. "We'll never get past the guards, let alone disable the system before they crush us." "And if we don't try?" Kara shot back. "We rot here, like the millions who already have. This is our chance to hit back." Adrian's voice cut through the rising tension. "We've been overlooked for too long. They think we're broken. They think we're incapable of fighting back. That arrogance is our advantage. If we can take out the orbital defenses, we can signal the resistance." The mention of the resistance, a scattered network of human fighters waging a shadow war against the Dominion, brought a spark of hope to the group. It was risky, but the plan had merit. Adrian knew time was running out. The Dominion's overseers were tightening their grip, and rumors suggested they were considering population control to optimize the mines. The next day, the group began their preparations. Kara smuggled medical supplies and tools, repurposing them into makeshift weapons and explosives. Malik used his analytical mind to identify guard patrol patterns and potential weak points. Adrian, as the natural leader, coordinated their efforts while maintaining the facade of a compliant worker. Tension built as the group awaited their moment to strike. A brutal overseer, Commander Threx, had recently increased the work quotas, subjecting the miners to even harsher conditions. Threx, a towering reptilian alien, was infamous for his cruelty. One evening, during a shift inspection, he made an example of a young miner who collapsed from exhaustion, dragging the boy into the open and executing him before the rest of the workers. The miners' collective grief hardened into resolve. The rebellion was no longer a distant idea, it was a necessity. Adrian and his group set the date for their strike, coinciding with a rare meteor shower that would temporarily disrupt the Dominion's sensor arrays. The night of the plan arrived, and the story takes a high-stakes turn. Adrian and his team navigated the labyrinthine tunnels under cover of darkness, avoiding patrols and security drones. The tension was palpable as each step brought them closer to the control hub. Finally, they reached their target, a fortified room glowing with Dominion tech. The group sprang into action, using their crude weapons and traps to neutralize the guards. The fight was quick but brutal, showcasing the humans' ingenuity and desperation. Adrian worked frantically to disable the defense system, his hands a blur over alien controls. Alarms blared, and reinforcements were surely on their way. Just as Malik barricaded the entrance with explosives, Adrian succeeded. The orbital cannons fell silent, and a signal burst from their hidden transmitter, carrying a desperate plea for help to the resistance. As they retreated into the tunnels, explosions rocked the mine. The Dominion forces were in chaos, and for the first time in years, the humans tasted a sliver of hope. But Adrian knew this was only the beginning. The Dominion would retaliate, and the rebellion they had ignited would need to burn brighter than ever. The part ends with Adrian looking back at the glowing flames of the uprising they had started, a fire that would soon engulf the galaxy. The Dominion's response was swift and merciless. Within hours of the orbital defense systems going offline, reinforcements arrived, blanketing Voros 7 in a sea of Dominion troops. Massive dropships descended, deploying squads of heavily armed soldiers and towering war machines. The rebellion, still in its infancy, was now in a fight for survival. Adrian, Kara, Malik, and their group had retreated deep into the mines, their faces illuminated by the flickering glow of emergency lights. With the control hub destroyed and their message sent to the resistance, their primary objective was achieved, but they now faced a grim reality: they were trapped. "We need to hold out until the resistance gets here," Adrian said, pacing the makeshift hideout they'd carved out of the rock. "If we scatter, we're dead. If we stay, we at least have a chance." "We don't even know if the resistance got the signal," Malik countered, leaning heavily against the wall, his voice tinged with frustration. "For all we know, we're fighting alone." "We're not alone," Kara said, her voice steady as she distributed the last of their scavenged weapons. "Every miner who's ever lost someone to the Dominion is with us. They just need a reason to fight." The words hung in the air, and Adrian saw the flicker of determination in Kara's eyes. It wasn't just about survival anymore, it was about igniting a larger rebellion. Their moment came sooner than expected. A group of miners stumbled into their hideout, battered but alive. Among them was Reyes, a seasoned laborer who had been part of the failed uprisings on Earth years ago. "The Dominion's rounding up workers in the Eastern Quadrant," Reyes reported grimly. "They're calling it a safety sweep, but we all know what that means." Adrian clenched his fists. "They're executing them to set an example." The room fell silent, tension thick in the air. Reyes continued, "A lot of the miners are scared, but some of them, they're ready. If we can give them weapons, they'll fight." Kara looked at Adrian. "This is it. If we hit them hard enough, we might buy the resistance enough time to get here." Adrian nodded. "Then we hit them hard. Gather everyone who's willing to fight. We'll make the Eastern Quadrant their graveyard." The scene shifted to the Eastern Quadrant of the mines. Dominion forces, led by Commander Threx himself, were herding miners into a central holding area. The reptilian overseer relished the fear and despair radiating from the humans. "You are insects," Threx growled, his voice amplified by the translator unit embedded in his armor. "You dare defy the Dominion? This rebellion ends now." Before Threx could issue the order to execute the prisoners, a deafening explosion rocked the area. Dust and debris filled the air as Adrian's group struck from the shadows, using their knowledge of the mines to outmaneuver the Dominion troops. The battle was chaotic and brutal. Armed with makeshift explosives and stolen Dominion weapons, the miners fought with a desperation that bordered on feral. Kara darted through the chaos, tending to the wounded while Malik coordinated the assault, using the terrain to funnel the enemy into traps. Adrian, wielding a plasma rifle he'd scavenged from a fallen soldier, led a group of fighters in a daring charge toward Threx's command post. The towering alien met them with brutal efficiency, cutting down miners with his energy whip. But Adrian was undeterred. "You think we're insects?" Adrian shouted, firing a burst of plasma that scorched the ground at Threx's feet. "You're about to find out what happens when you step on a hornet's nest." Threx snarled and lunged at Adrian, but the human sidestepped, luring the overseer into a trap. Malik detonated an explosive charge, collapsing part of the tunnel and cutting off Threx's reinforcements. The battle reached a fever pitch as more miners joined the fray, emboldened by the sight of their oppressors falling. The Dominion troops, accustomed to breaking human spirits with fear, were overwhelmed by the sheer ferocity of the uprising. By dawn, the Eastern Quadrant was in ruins, but the humans had won a decisive victory. The miners, though bloodied and battered, stood together, united by their shared triumph. Adrian stood over the battered form of Commander Threx, who lay pinned under debris. The alien's defiance had been replaced by a flicker of fear. "You've already lost," Threx hissed. "The Dominion will crush you." Adrian leaned closer, his voice low and steady. "Let them try. Humanity's done kneeling. As the first rays of sunlight pierced the dust-filled air, a faint signal crackled through Adrian's communicator. It was the Resistance. Reinforcements were on their way. The miners erupted in cheers, their hope rekindled. Adrian, however, knew this was only the beginning. The Dominion wouldn't take this loss lightly, and their retaliation would be swift. The part ends with Adrian looking out over the battlefield, determination etched into his face. "Let them come," he muttered. "We'll show them what humanity's fury really looks like." The atmosphere on Voros 7 was thick with anticipation. The miners had tasted their first victory against the Dominion, but their triumph came with a grim reality: they had stirred a beast. From the safety of their fortified hideout, Adrian, Kara, Malik, and the other leaders of the rebellion strategized their next move while preparing for the inevitable retaliation. The faint signal from the Resistance had confirmed that help was on the way, but it also came with a warning: the Dominion had deployed a fleet to Voros 7 to quell the uprising. Reinforcements would take days to arrive, and until then, the miners were on their own. The Dominion's reprisal came with ruthless precision. Massive dropships descended through the planet's atmosphere, their shadows stretching ominously across the mining facilities. Swarms of Dominion shock troops poured out, their numbers dwarfing the ragtag human fighters. Alongside them were mechanized walkers and heavily armored combat drones, their weapons bristling with deadly energy. Commander Threx, bruised but alive after the last battle, now led the operation from the safety of an orbital command ship. His humiliation on the surface had fueled his rage, and he was determined to crush the humans personally. "Burn their rebellion to ash," Threx snarled to his subordinates. "Make them regret ever defying the Dominion." Adrian stood on a rocky outcrop overlooking the mine's central sector, his keen eyes scanning the horizon as the Dominion forces advanced. The miners had fortified key positions, using explosives to collapse tunnels and block paths, but against the sheer firepower of their enemy, it was only a matter of time before the defenses were breached. "This isn't a fight we can win head-on," Malik said, joining Adrian. He gestured to the advancing walkers. "We're outnumbered, outgunned, and—" "Not outsmarted," Adrian interrupted. He turned to Malik with a determined look. "The Dominion thinks this is just another suppression mission. They're not expecting us to think like them. Let's use that." Malik raised an eyebrow. "You've got something in mind?" "Yeah. We turn their strength into a weakness. They rely on centralized command, those walkers, the drones, even their ground troops. Cut the head off, and the body collapses." Kara joined them, overhearing the conversation. "You're talking about their comm relay," she said. "The one Threx is using to coordinate the assault." Adrian nodded. "Exactly. It's a long shot, but if we can disrupt their communications, we can create chaos. That'll give us enough time for the Resistance to get here." The plan required a small strike team to infiltrate the Dominion's forward base and destroy the relay. Adrian volunteered to lead the team, and Kara insisted on coming along, despite Adrian's protests. "Don't start with the too dangerous speech," Kara said, strapping a stolen Dominion energy rifle to her back. "You need someone who can patch you up when this inevitably goes sideways." Reluctantly, Adrian agreed. Malik, meanwhile, stayed behind to coordinate the miners' defenses, setting up ambush points and fallback positions. As Adrian and his team slipped through the labyrinthine tunnels leading to the Dominion base, the tension in the air was palpable. The sound of distant explosions and the hum of enemy machinery echoed through the rock, a constant reminder of the stakes. The Dominion's forward base was a sprawling network of prefabricated structures and energy shields, bristling with turrets and patrolled by squads of soldiers. Adrian's team used their knowledge of the terrain to avoid detection, relying on stealth and guile to approach the comm relay. Their luck held until they were within sight of the relay, a towering spire of alien metal, surrounded by troops and automated defenses. Just as they were preparing to strike, an alarm blared, and searchlights swept the area. "We've been spotted!" Kara shouted, diving for cover as a burst of plasma fire rained down on their position. Adrian gritted his teeth. "Stick to the plan. Kara, cover me." the scene erupted into chaos. Kara and the others laid down suppressive fire while Adrian sprinted toward the relay, weaving between explosions and enemy fire. Dominion drones swarmed the area, their targeting systems locked on him, but the miners' crude explosives kept them at bay. Reaching the base of the relay, Adrian set the charges he had prepared earlier. Sweat dripped down his face as he worked quickly, the sound of approaching footsteps growing louder. "Hurry, Adrian." Kara's voice crackled over the comm, "They're closing in." With a final twist of the detonator, Adrian activated the charges and bolted, diving for cover just as a deafening explosion ripped through the air. The relay tower collapsed in a shower of sparks and debris, and the Dominion's forces faltered as their coordinated systems went offline. Back at the mines, Malik and the defenders seized the opportunity. The Dominion's confusion allowed them to launch surprise attacks, dismantling walkers and drones with carefully laid traps. Adrian and his team returned to the hideout, battered but alive. The miners greeted them with cheers, their morale soaring. But Adrian remained focused. "We bought ourselves time," he told the crowd, his voice steady. "But this fight isn't over. The Dominion will regroup, and we need to be ready." As the camera pans out, the scene ends with a glimpse of the Resistance fleet in hyperspace, racing toward Voros 7. The humans had proven they could fight, but the next battle would determine if they could survive. The mines of Voros 7 were eerily quiet. For the first time in hours, the thunder of Dominion war machines had subsided, replaced by the distant crackle of fires and the groans of injured miners. The destruction of the comm relay had thrown the Dominion forces into chaos, but Adrian knew it was only a matter of time before they regrouped. In the command chamber of their fortified hideout, Adrian, Kara, and Malik pored over a holographic map of the mines. A group of veteran miners joined them, their faces hardened by years of oppression but now alight with the spark of rebellion. "We've crippled their communications," Malik said, tapping a marker on the map. "But they still outnumber us 5-1, and we're running out of supplies. If we stay here, we're done." "Then we don't stay," Adrian replied. He pointed to a series of tunnels leading to the planet's surface. "We lure them out. The open ground will make their numbers a liability, not an advantage. If the Resistance fleet arrives in time, we can pin them between us and reinforcements." "It's a good plan," Kara said, her tone cautious. "But it's risky. If the Resistance doesn't show, we'll be slaughtered out there." Adrian's gaze hardened. "We don't have a choice. We've lit the fire, now we have to keep it burning." As the miners prepared for the next phase of their fight, Kara worked tirelessly in the makeshift infirmary, tending to the wounded and ensuring everyone was battle-ready. Among the injured was a young boy named Timo, no older than 13, who had been caught in the crossfire during the previous battle. "You're brave to fight alongside us," Kara said, gently wrapping a bandage around Timo's arm. The boy winced but managed a smile. "My parents would have fought if they were still here. They told me humans don't give up." Kara felt a lump in her throat but forced a smile. "They were right. We don't give up. And neither will you." The scene shifts to the Dominion command ship orbiting Voros 7. Commander Threx, his face twisted with fury, barked orders at his officers. "The humans have tasted victory, and they think they're invincible," he growled. "We will crush their spirit. Deploy the purifiers." A collective murmur spread through the Dominion officers. The purifiers were a brutal force, designed for total annihilation. Their arrival meant the Dominion was done with containment and would stop at nothing to wipe the rebellion from existence. Back on the surface, Adrian and his group executed their plan. Using the labyrinth of tunnels to their advantage, they staged hit-and-run attacks on the Dominion forces, drawing them into the open plains surrounding the mines. The open battlefield was a stark contrast to the confined tunnels. Dominion walkers and drones loomed like giants, their weapons glowing with destructive energy. But the miners fought with unrelenting determination, using guerrilla tactics to outmaneuver their enemies. Kara led a group of medics and sharpshooters, picking off Dominion troops from elevated positions while tending to the wounded. Malik coordinated ambushes, using the miners' knowledge of the terrain to set traps that crippled the enemy's advance. Adrian, in the thick of the fighting, inspired the miners with his fearlessness. Wielding a Dominion plasma rifle, he led charges that turned the tide of smaller skirmishes, proving that humans could match the Dominion's might with ingenuity and sheer willpower. As the battle raged, the sky above Voros 7 darkened with the arrival of the purifiers. Massive Dominion warships descended, their hulls bristling with weaponry. From their holds emerged towering mechanical monstrosities, walking tanks equipped with flame projectors and energy cannons designed to leave no survivors. The miners' resolve faltered as the purifiers unleashed their wrath. Entire squads were incinerated in moments, and the tide of the battle began to turn against them. Adrian's communicator crackled to life. "We're losing ground," Malik's voice came through, tense but controlled. "If we don't fall back now, we won't have anyone left to fight." Adrian gritted his teeth. He looked around at the chaos, his mind racing. "We hold the line," he said firmly. "The resistance is close, I can feel it. We just have to give them a signal." Kara, overhearing the conversation, ran to Adrian's side. "What kind of signal?" "They'll obliterate us before they see anything." Adrian pointed to the largest Dominion warship, hovering low over the battlefield. "We take that down. If the Resistance sees a Dominion cruiser falling out of the sky, they'll know where to strike." Kara's eyes widened. "You're insane. How are we supposed to do that?" Adrian gave a grim smile. "The same way we've done everything else. We improvise." The part ends with Adrian and a small group of miners breaking away from the main force, heading toward the Dominion warship under heavy fire. Explosions light the night as the battle reaches its peak, and the camera pans upward to show faint lights streaking through the stars, the Resistance fleet, racing to join the fray. The Dominion warship loomed over the battlefield like a harbinger of doom. Its massive energy cannons fired in rhythmic pulses, carving fiery paths of destruction into the ground below. Adrian led his strike team through the chaos, weaving between burning wreckage and Dominion patrols. Every step toward the ship was a gamble, but the miners' eyes gleamed with grim determination. "This thing's too big to take down with what we've got," Malik muttered over the comms. He was stationed with the main group, holding the line against the advancing purifiers. "What's the plan once you get inside?" Adrian ducked behind a cluster of boulders as a patrol passed overhead. "We hit the reactor. Even a Dominion warship can't fly without its guts." Kara, crouched beside him, rolled her eyes. "And how, exactly, are we supposed to get to the reactor without getting fried or shot?" Adrian grinned. "We improvise." Reaching the warship was no small feat. The Dominion had fortified the area with turrets and drones, and the purifiers roamed dangerously close. The strike team used stolen Dominion equipment to mask their approach, slipping past checkpoints and automated defenses. When they finally reached the ship's landing ramp, Kara hacked into its access panel. The ramp descended with a hiss, revealing a cavernous interior filled with Dominion soldiers and supply crates. "Stay close and stay quiet," Adrian whispered, motioning for the team to follow. Inside, the scale of the ship was overwhelming. Towering support beams and energy conduits stretched into the distance, casting an eerie glow. The strike team moved cautiously, their footsteps muffled by the hum of the ship's systems. Meanwhile, on the surface, the battle grew increasingly dire. Malik's forces were barely holding the line against the purifiers, who advanced relentlessly. Explosions tore through the miners' defenses, and the Dominion troops pressed their advantage. Malik grabbed a communicator and shouted into it, his voice hoarse. "Adrian, we're running out of time. If you've got a miracle, now's the time to pull it off." Adrian and his team reached the reactor chamber, a massive, pulsating core of energy encased in layers of Dominion alloy. Guards patrolled the area, their reptilian features unreadable but menacing. Kara studied the reactor from a safe distance. That thing's shielded. We can't just blow it up with conventional explosives. We don't need to blow it up, Adrian replied. He held up a device cobbled together from Dominion tech, a makeshift disruptor. We just need to overload it. Kara's eyes widened. You do realize that's going to cause a chain reaction, right? As in, we'll all be vaporized? Adrian smirked. Not if we move fast enough. The team sprang into action. Adrian and Kara worked to attach the disruptor to the reactor's control panel while the others provided cover, holding off waves of Dominion troops that flooded the chamber. The disruptor emitted a high-pitched whine as it powered up, drawing energy from the reactor itself. Kara's hands flew over the panel, bypassing security protocols and keeping the device stable. We've got company, one of the miners shouted as a Dominion enforcer, a heavily armored, towering soldier, charged into the room. Its energy shield absorbed the miner's fire as it advanced relentlessly. Adrian grabbed a plasma rifle and stepped forward. Keep working. I'll handle this. The fight was brutal. Adrian dodged the enforcer's strikes, using his agility to stay one step ahead. He fired at its joints, exploiting weaknesses in its armor, and finally managed to bring it down with a well-placed explosive. Adrian, it's done! Kara shouted. The disruptor's whine reached a deafening crescendo. Adrian and Kara grabbed their team and bolted for the exit, alarms blaring throughout the ship. From the battlefield, Malik and the miners looked up as the warship began to falter. The glow of its engines dimmed, and smoke billowed from its underbelly. What the hell are they doing up there? Malik muttered. Seconds later, the ship erupted in a cataclysmic explosion. A shockwave rippled across the battlefield, knocking Dominion troops and purifiers off balance. The miners, stunned but exhilarated, erupted in cheers. Adrian's voice crackled over the comms. The big guy's down. Now's your chance. The miners rallied, their spirits reinvigorated by the sight of the fallen warship. Using makeshift vehicles and weapons scavenged from the wreckage, they launched a ferocious counterattack. The Dominion forces, disoriented and leaderless, began to falter. As the miners pressed their advantage, streaks of light appeared in the sky, dropships from the Resistance fleet. The Dominion's orbital blockade was breaking, and reinforcements were finally arriving. Adrian and his team emerged from the wreckage of the warship, battered but alive. Kara collapsed onto the ground, laughing breathlessly. You're insane, she said, looking at Adrian. Maybe, Adrian replied, his voice hoarse but triumphant. But it worked. The part ends with Adrian and the miners watching as the Resistance fleet descended, their ships engaging the remaining Dominion forces. The tide had turned, but Adrian knew the war was far from over. The Resistance fleet tore through the skies, its sleek warships outmaneuvering the Dominion's blockade. Streaks of light and bursts of plasma lit up the heavens as Resistance fighters engaged Dominion vessels in a desperate bid for control. On the ground, the miners cheered at the sight of reinforcements. Adrian stood among them, his face grim despite the victory. Don't celebrate yet, he said, scanning the battlefield. This fight isn't over. The Dominion doesn't retreat without a fight. Kara, leaning against a makeshift barricade, wiped grime from her face. Reinforcements or not, we're running on fumes. If the Dominion sends another wave, we're toast. Malik joined them, his face etched with exhaustion. Then we need to hit them before they regroup. Take out their leadership. Without a chain of command, the rest will crumble. Adrian nodded. Threx. He's still up there, hiding behind his fleet. Kara frowned. You're not seriously thinking about going after him, are you? Adrian's expression hardened. We didn't come this far to let him escape. If we want to end this, we have to take the fight to him. The Resistance fleet established a temporary command post near the mines, its leaders meeting with Adrian and the miners to plan the next move. General Solara, a seasoned veteran with sharp eyes and a commanding presence, surveyed the situation. You've done well holding the line, she said, her voice firm but respectful. But if we're going to win this, we need to hit the Dominion where it hurts. We've already weakened their forces here, Adrian said. But Threx is still in command. Take him out, and the rest of them will scatter. Solara raised an eyebrow. You're suggesting we launch a direct assault on his flagship? That's a suicide mission. It's a risk, Adrian admitted. But it's one we have to take. Threx won't stop until we're all dead. We have to end this now. The plan was bold, and dangerous. A small strike team, including Adrian, Kara, and a squad of elite resistance fighters, would infiltrate Threx's flagship. Their mission: eliminate the Dominion commander and disable the ship's control systems. Before departing, Adrian addressed the miners. This isn't just about Voros, 7. It's about every colony the Dominion has ever oppressed. We've shown them that humanity can fight back. Now, we need to finish what we started. The miners cheered, their voices a mix of defiance and hope. As the strike team prepared to leave, Timo approached Adrian, his face resolute. Take this, the boy said, handing Adrian a small, crudely made pendant. It's for luck. Adrian smiled and ruffled Timo's hair. Thanks, kid. Keep holding the line for us. The strike team boarded a resistance dropship, its hull outfitted with stealth technology to evade Dominion scanners. As the ship ascended through the atmosphere, the battlefield below grew smaller, the fires of war blending into the darkness of space. Inside the dropship, Kara double-checked her gear, her expression tense. This is insane, she muttered. Adrian grinned. You've said that before. Because it keeps being true, she shot back. You really think we can pull this off? We don't have a choice, Adrian replied. Threx made this personal. Now we make him regret it. The Dominion flagship was a massive, imposing vessel, its hull bristling with weapons and shielded by layers of advanced armor. The strike team landed in a maintenance bay, bypassing security systems with help from Kara's technical skills. Moving through the ship's labyrinthine corridors, the team encountered heavy resistance. Dominion soldiers fought fiercely, their numbers overwhelming. But the humans' determination and guerrilla tactics turned the tide. Reaching the command deck, Adrian and his team confronted Threx. The Dominion commander stood tall, his reptilian eyes burning with hatred. You've been a thorn in my side for too long, human, Threx growled, his voice echoing through the chamber. But this ends now. Adrian raised his weapon, his expression steely. You're right. It does. The battle in the command deck was intense. Threx, armed with advanced Dominion weaponry, proved to be a formidable opponent. The strike team fought desperately, using the environment to their advantage. Kara hacked into the ship's systems, overriding its controls and disabling key defenses. Adrian, I need more time, she shouted as sparks flew around her. Then we'll give it to you. Adrian yelled back, engaging Threx in close combat. The fight was brutal, each blow exchanged with deadly intent. Finally, with a calculated move, Adrian disarmed Threx and drove him to the ground. The Dominion commander sneered, blood dripping from his mouth. You think killing me will save your people? The Dominion will never stop. Adrian stared down at him, his voice cold. Then we'll make sure they remember what happens when they try. With a final strike, Adrian ended Threx's reign. As Kara completed her hack, the ship's systems began to overload. Alarms blared, and the team hurried to evacuate. The Dominion flagship erupted in a series of explosions, its destruction visible even from the planet's surface. The miners and resistance fighters cheered as the flagship's remains burned in the atmosphere. The Dominion fleet, leaderless and disorganized, retreated from Voros, 7. Adrian and his team returned to the surface, battered but victorious. The miners greeted them as heroes, their cheers echoing across the battlefield. But as Adrian looked to the stars, his expression was somber. This was just the beginning, he said quietly. The Dominion's still out there. And so are we. The aftermath of the battle left Voros 7 scarred but victorious. Smoke still rose from the remains of Dominion war machines, and the sky above was dotted with the wreckage of destroyed starships. For the first time in years, the miners stood on their planet as free people. Adrian walked among the crowd, his presence met with cheers and pats on the back. Despite the celebration, his mind was heavy with the knowledge that this victory, as monumental as it felt, was only one step in a much larger war. Kara caught up with him, her arm wrapped in a makeshift sling from a wound she'd sustained during their escape. "You don't look too happy for someone who just took down a Dominion flagship." Adrian gave her a faint smile. "It's not over. The Dominion doesn't take defeat lightly. They'll be back, and they'll hit harder." "Which is why we need to make this moment count," Malik interjected, joining them. His face was bruised, but his voice carried the confidence of a man who had seen the impossible become reality. "The galaxy needs to know what happened here. We've shown that humans can fight back." That evening, under the stars, a council was formed. Representatives from the Resistance fleet, the miners, and other human colonies gathered to discuss their next move. General Solara addressed the crowd, her voice carrying the weight of authority. "The destruction of Threx's flagship is a turning point," she said. "But the Dominion is vast, and their retaliation will be swift. We need to use this momentum to unite the colonies. Together, we can stand against them." Adrian stepped forward, his voice steady. "Voros 7 was just the beginning. If we can organize and strike where they least expect it, we can do more than survive, we can win." The crowd erupted in agreement, their voices filled with determination. Plans were set in motion to broadcast their victory across the galaxy, a call to arms for every human colony under Dominion rule. Meanwhile, in a hidden Dominion stronghold, a new figure emerged from the shadows. High Chancellor Varric, Threx's superior, loomed over a holographic display of the destroyed flagship. His cold, calculating eyes narrowed as he spoke to his advisors. "Threx underestimated the humans," he said, his voice a low growl. "That mistake will not be repeated. Deploy the Warden fleet. I want every rebellious colony brought to its knees." One of his advisors hesitated. "The Warden fleet? But, Chancellor, their deployment could—" Varric cut him off with a glare. "We are not discussing possibilities. We are executing judgment. Let the humans know the price of defiance." Back on Voros 7, preparations were underway to rebuild the colony and fortify its defenses. Engineers worked to repair damaged infrastructure, while resistance fighters trained the miners in advanced combat techniques. Adrian found Timo helping repair a damaged transport vehicle. The boy's hands were covered in grease, but his face was lit with determination. "Hey, kid," Adrian said, crouching beside him. "You did good out there. You're part of this fight now." Timo grinned. "I'm not just fighting for Voros 7. I'm fighting for everyone." Adrian ruffled his hair. "That's the spirit." As the Resistance prepared to broadcast their message, Kara worked tirelessly to secure a safe transmission. The Dominion surveillance network was vast, and sending out a signal without being traced was a monumental task. "I've patched together a relay using parts from the Dominion comm station we destroyed," Kara explained to Adrian. "It's not perfect, but it should get the message out long enough for people to hear it." Adrian nodded. "Good. Make it count." The broadcast began with images of the battle, miners fighting Dominion troops, the flagship's destruction, and the cheers of victory. Adrian's voice narrated over the footage, his words deliberate and powerful. "To every human colony living under Dominion rule, this is Voros 7. We were miners, farmers, and workers. We had no weapons, no training, and no hope. But we stood together. We fought back. And we won." The message spread like wildfire, reaching colonies across the galaxy. On distant worlds, humans watched with awe and hope, their own anger at the Dominion reigniting. The broadcast ended with Adrian's closing words: "The Dominion wants us to believe we're powerless. But we are not. Humanity's fury has been unleashed, and we will not stop until we are free. As the transmission ended, the Resistance gathered around a holomap of the galaxy. Solara pointed to several key Dominion strongholds. "These are our next targets," she said. "We'll strike fast and hard, rallying more colonies to our cause with each victory." Adrian studied the map, his resolve firm. The Dominion has ruled for too long. It's time we reminded them why humanity is not to be underestimated. But as the rebels celebrated their newfound unity, the first signs of the Warden fleet's approach began to appear. Long-range sensors detected massive Dominion warships moving toward Voros 7, their engines burning with vengeance. Adrian's communicator crackled to life. "Adrian, we've got trouble," Malik's voice came through. "The Dominion's not waiting to lick its wounds. They're coming. And they're bringing everything they've got." Adrian looked to the horizon, where the faint glow of Dominion ships began to appear in the night sky. "Then we give them a fight they'll never forget," he said, his voice steady. The part ends with Adrian rallying the miners and Resistance fighters, preparing for the inevitable clash. The camera pans upward, showing the massive Dominion fleet descending upon Voros 7, setting the stage for an epic confrontation. The Warden fleet descended upon Voros 7 like a storm, their massive ships blotting out the stars. Each warship was a monument to Dominion power, bristling with weapons and shielded by layers of impenetrable armor. The miners and Resistance fighters watched in tense silence as the enemy closed in. Adrian stood at the forefront, his expression grim but resolute. "They've brought their best," he said, addressing the gathered fighters. "But we've shown them what we're capable of. We're not just fighting for Voros 7 anymore. We're fighting for every colony, every human who's ever lived under their rule. Let's show them what fury looks like." The battle began with a ferocity that shook the ground. The Dominion's warships unleashed devastating orbital strikes, targeting key Resistance positions. The miners, fortified with salvaged Dominion weaponry, fired back with everything they had, their makeshift artillery lighting up the night. Resistance fighters took to the skies in commandeered dropships, weaving through the Dominion fleet to target their smaller vessels. Kara coordinated the aerial assault, her voice sharp over the comms. "Focus fire on their flanking ships. We need to break their formation." Adrian led the ground forces, using hit-and-run tactics to outmaneuver the Dominion's heavier units. The miners' intimate knowledge of the terrain gave them an edge, allowing them to set ambushes and traps. Inside the Dominion command ship, High Chancellor Varric observed the battle with cold precision. "The humans are resourceful," he admitted, his tone devoid of emotion. "But resourcefulness is no match for overwhelming power. Deploy the purifiers," he ordered. "Crush them." The purifiers, Dominion shock troops, descended onto the battlefield. These towering soldiers were armed with advanced weapons and shielded in heavy armor, their presence striking fear into the Resistance. Adrian faced one of the purifiers head-on, dodging its energy strikes with practiced agility. He fired a plasma grenade into its exposed joint, bringing the hulking warrior crashing to the ground. "Keep moving," he shouted to his team. "Don't let them pin us down." As the battle raged, Kara's voice crackled over Adrian's communicator. "I've got an idea, but it's risky." "When isn't it?" Adrian replied, dodging another strike. "There's a power relay on their flagship that controls their orbital strikes," Kara explained. If we can disable it, we'll take out their biggest advantage. Do it, Adrian said. I'll cover you. Kara led a small team on a daring infiltration mission to the Dominion flagship. Using stolen Dominion credentials, she bypassed security checkpoints and reached the power relay. As she worked to disable it, alarms blared, and Dominion troops closed in. Adrian, we're out of time. Kara yelled over the comms. Hold on. Adrian replied, rallying his forces to create a diversion. The miners and resistance fighters launched a coordinated assault on the Dominion's ground forces, drawing attention away from Kara's team. Malik, wielding a salvaged energy cannon, unleashed a devastating barrage that cleared a path through the enemy lines. Go, go, go! Malik shouted, urging his comrades forward. Inside the flagship, Kara finished her work just as Dominion troops breached the room. She grabbed her weapon, standing her ground. This is for Voros 7, she muttered, firing at the advancing soldiers. Suddenly, the power relay overloaded, sending a massive shockwave through the ship. The orbital strike ceased, and the Dominion fleet's systems flickered. Got it. Kara yelled into her comm, now get me out of here. Adrian and his team launched a desperate rescue mission to extract Kara. Fighting through waves of Dominion soldiers, they reached her just as reinforcements arrived. Cutting it close, aren't you? Kara said, smirking despite her injuries. Wouldn't be the same without you, Adrian replied, pulling her to safety. With the Dominion fleet in disarray, the Resistance fleet launched a full-scale assault. General Solara led the charge, her warship tearing through the Dominion's weakened defenses. Focus on their flagship, Solara ordered. Take it down. The Resistance fleet's combined firepower overwhelmed the Dominion's flagship. Explosions rippled across its hull as its engines failed. Inside, Varric glared at the chaos unfolding around him. This is not the end, he growled, moments before the ship erupted in a blinding explosion. The destruction of the flagship sent a shockwave through the Dominion fleet. Leaderless and demoralized, the remaining ships retreated, leaving Voros 7 in peace. On the ground, the miners and resistance fighters cheered, their voices filled with triumph and relief. Adrian stood among them, his face lit by the glow of the burning wreckage in the sky. We did it, Kara said, standing beside him. Adrian nodded. This was just one battle. But it's a start. The story ends with Adrian addressing the galaxy in another broadcast. Today, Voros 7 stood against the Dominion and won. This is not just our victory. It's a message to every human, everywhere. Stand with us. Fight with us. Together, we will take back our freedom. As the broadcast ends, the camera pans to the stars, showing countless human colonies watching with newfound hope. Humanity's fury had been unleashed, and the galaxy would never be the same.